They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So, the Houston Rockets are bringing in DeMarcus Cousins as well as Christian Wood in order to fill their obvious hole at the center position after committing to the small ball last year. Obviously, they no longer have Mike D'Antoni, no longer have Daryl Morey, so now they're going back to, having a center on the roster that they can go to. They're bringing in two options there of guys that they can play with and see what they want to do there and how these guys fit in their lineup. The problem with this is we still don't know what the direction of this franchise is going to be. Are they going to be entering a rebuild in the near future, or are they going to plan on contending for the next couple of seasons? It's really unclear at this point. We know that Russell Westbrook has requested a trade. We know that James Harden has requested a trade, but only really to the Brooklyn Nets. He doesn't seem like he wants to go anywhere else, and we haven't really heard anything about either of those two players for the last, about a week or so. We heard about those trade rumors, about a week before the draft. And before free agency, and now everybody's focus has been on the draft and free agency this past week, and we haven't really heard much on on the development front of potential Russell Westbrook and James Harden trade destinations. We know that the market for Russ is pretty barren, and there was only a few teams that might potentially be interested. One of those teams was the Charlotte Hornets, and after drafting LaMelo Ball, they don't really feel like a candidate anymore, as well as after they signed Gordon Hayward. It just doesn't feel like that the Russ option is on the table for them at the moment. And then that really only leaves me with like two potential teams that I could see making a move, maybe three. We know that the Clippers rumored to be interested, but to me that one seems a little bit of a stretch just because they've already made some moves in the offseason, re-signing players and using up their cap space. They still can make a trade work using like Patrick Beverley, Zubac, and freaking Lou Williams, of course, and so they could potentially be in the mix there, but I don't know if they're quite ready to make that sort of a drastic move. Maybe it's the New York Knicks, who haven't really done much with their cap space yet. I believe their roster is full at this point, so it's looking like their offseason is done, but just haven't really signed anybody to big money. So they could potentially use Westbrook if they feel like that's a move they want to make, and they can they can easily match that salary to get a deal done. It depends on, are they willing to give up draft picks. And then the Orlando Magic are the other team where they've been lacking star power and a point guard for a long time, and so they can also cobble together some salary and make that move happen. Not sure if any of that will go down at this point and how much the Rockets are going to get back, and if the Rockets aren't getting a good return, do they even really want to move Russ? Because at that point it's not really worth it if you're moving him for just matching salary and maybe one first-round pick. It's probably just not worth it for them at that point, even if he is unhappy. You just want to hold on to him. And then James Harden, you don't technically have to trade him to Brooklyn, but if you're not trading Russ, there's really no point in trading James. That one's just kind of, obviously you would get a lot back. I just don't know if there's the package out there for Harden right now, just because the two rumor destinations, Philadelphia, I think that Houston would demand either Embiid or Ben Simmons back, and neither of those, it doesn't feel like Daryl Morey is going to break that duo up just quite yet. Maybe a year from now, but probably not at the moment. And then for Brooklyn, I think it makes sense for them to do this. They can match salary and throw in some young players, and they've got all their draft picks moving forward, so this is the team that could do it. But do they have the best package? I don't know. But would the Rockets accept a package from another team? Probably, but Harden would likely not be happy about it. We could go into all the semantics with a potential trade for those two, but for right now, at least for the moment, it looks like the Rockets are probably going to stick with those two on the team going into the season. Maybe they reevaluate, a month or two, or at the trade deadline that potentially, things have gotten so bad that they feel like they just have to make a move and sell low. And so, who knows at that point. And then I guess I did forget to mention, there was the reported Russell Westbrook, John Wall thing, and I guess that makes sense for both teams, but we heard GM Tommy Shepard for the Wizards talking about how he doesn't, John Wall is not on the table for a trade right now, so who knows what's going on with that. But that's, I guess, also another option there. So if the Rockets don't trade those guys, and at the moment it doesn't look like they will, then how does this team fit going into next year? Well, like I mentioned, they brought in Boogie and Christian Wood, two competent centers. Christian Wood's a nice young piece. He's still getting better, and he, finally gets his payday after being on minimum contracts the last couple of years. 3 years, $41 million. That's a good contract for him, and he has a chance to prove, what he can do. This team figures to be good if, like I said, if they keep these guys. So, Christian Wood will have a chance to be the starting center for this team. I assume he'll start. Boogie will probably come off the bench at this point, and they'll work that out there. And then Boogie will be the backup. He'll be able to come in. Hopefully, he can be back to at least some form of what he once was. We last saw him, of course, with the Golden State Warriors, and he was pretty mediocre for most of that run he had with them. He really only played for a couple months, wasn't healthy for until a couple months into the year, and then was able to come back, wasn't really himself, then tore his quad in the playoffs, and he did play in the finals, but he wasn't healthy then. He probably shouldn't have been playing on that quad, and he had a couple good games and a couple stinkers in that final series. So, how do you value Boogie at this point after a torn Achilles and a torn ACL, especially for a guy that big? Who knows, right? So we'll just have to see how good he looks coming back from that injury, but hopefully for him and for his career, he can maybe work something out here with Houston. Beyond that, on this roster, even if they don't do a move away from Harden and Russ, I would anticipate that they're heavily shopping Eric Gordon right now. That contract's going to be kind of hard to find a taker on, but if I was them, even if you are trying to be good next season, just try to get off of that money, because it just doesn't really make sense to keep that guy around on a team that probably isn't a title contender at this point. And you can maybe get something back for that, split that up into a couple smaller contracts, maybe try to go for more depth, because this team isn't very deep right now. And then, we've heard Daniel House's name floated as a potential trade candidate, because there might be some friction in the locker room with him as well. That's, his salary is pretty low, and for a guy like that's pretty palatable for another team to be able to take in, as well as PJ Tucker, who's on an expiring deal. He would fit nicely on a lot of contenders. I would assume that he would have a pretty strong market should Houston decide to move on from him, whether that's now or at the trade deadline. I think that makes a lot of sense for them to consider trading PJ Tucker, because I think you could actually get a pretty good return in terms of draft picks for a 35-year-old power forward on an expiring contract. There's that's pretty unheard of, to be able to get a good return for a guy with his age and contract number, but I think they could actually get something pretty solid back for that. So Houston, to me, it all depends on how this trade request thing develops, because we could see them completely blow it up and be one of the bottom teams in the West next year, or if they hold on to everybody, they're contending for a top 5 seed again. So I would never pick them to go to the finals. I wouldn't pick them to go to the conference finals, but this is potentially a second round team, assuming that they keep everything together. I think that's probably about as far as they'll go. When you have James Harden, that's usually about at least as far as he'll get you. So we'll just have to see with all of the trade rumors and everything out there. If I had to bet right now, I think what probably happens is they hold on to Russ for a couple months into the season, and then I think eventually things just will probably get so bad that they'll have to sell low on him. Maybe a team like the Magic or the Knicks decides to take a chance bringing Russ in, maybe at the deadline or a little bit beforehand, but I just don't think James Harden is going to be somewhere else by this time, during this regular season. Maybe this time next year, next off season, we could potentially see James Harden move, but I just don't think there's a package out there that really makes sense. Houston, I don't think is quite desperate enough. They have, a lot of leverage here, because they can just hold on to him. He's under contract. They're under no obligation to trade him right now. And I just don't think Brooklyn is quite ready to throw the kitchen sink at the Rockets and say, here's 7 first-round picks and Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen and all of our young pieces. I just don't know if they're quite ready to do that just yet, and maybe Kyrie Irving doesn't approve or whatever. So we will just have to see, depending on how Houston season goes, how Brooklyn season goes. We could see a move around the deadline, but I think for right now, it's more likely that James Harden remains a Rocket for the entirety of this regular season, and then maybe we'll reassess next year. So that's about all I got for the Rockets today. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about this, this offseason for the Rockets. I'll be back later today talking about some of the max contracts that were handed out for the 2017 draft class during this free agency. So tune in for that one, and I'll be back later today, and I'll see you guys then.